Fascinating character. Walid Shoebat, he was in the PLO, high-ranking member of the Palestine Liberation Organization, the Muslim Brotherhood, and very active in these groups. And then he said, no, I've committed acts against Israel, against people who oppose me, acts of violence, and it was wrong. He began to read the Bible. He became a Christian. He's completely expunged all of the hatreds he previously had. And he joins us now from Washington. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I always ask this question of there's a good handful of people like yourself who've come out of a very dark place into something much brighter. You're not flavor of the month with some of your former colleagues. Do you live in any fear? Do you hide your location at all?
Yes, I mean, I do have some issues of privacy, of course. I'm a person who's always attacked. No stranger asked the question. I'm sitting here in CNN, which attacks me as well. They try to say that Walid Shoebat has never been a terrorist. Yet you're in Canada. I'm not permitted to go to Canada because they know that I was a terrorist. I get arrested every time I go to Canada. I get sent back to the U.S. Yet the Canadians have no problems seeking my help to expose terror supporters. In fact, the Peel Police, I've worked with them as well. You got Jeffrey Mason down there. I've given him some good information. He contacts me every now and then regarding terror supporters and terror issues.
It's so paradoxical. Let's talk a little bit about this, because CNN, obviously they have certain politics, but they speak to many people. What is this suicidal impulse in the West, where people are reluctant to expose and condemn the very enemy who want to kill them? I mean, people on CNN, you have a lot of people very liberal, they may be gay, feminist, they'll be the first victims of Islamism, but they'll pretend that it's not a threat.
Well, yes, that's a great question, because most people think that, I mean, the conservatives think, well, the liberals got to be naive about the threat of Islamic fundamentalism. But I don't think it's an issue of naivety. It's an issue of agreement. Because if you look at conservatism in the West, conservatives really, they're not pro-abortion. They say life begins at the moment of conception. Yet in Islam, as a religion, it doesn't begin at the moment of conception. The Islamic slick willies or the professors talk about the Big Bang as an Islamic concept. They talk about al-ishtirakiyya al-islamiyya, which is Islamic socialism, which, tickles the ears of the Al Gores of the world. Environmentalism also is in this Islamic movement. So you always find at demonstrations, whether it's against Israel, if you find a demonstrations that is anti-Israel, you'll find liberals, anarchists, socialists, professors, and Muslim fundamentalists as well. So it's not a conservative system as most people think. Islam is not, in fact, Islam itself is not really a religion per se, because Sharia is not a religion. Sharia is an issue of laws. Faisal Abdul Rauf, the man behind the Ground Zero Mosque, he says America must become Sharia compliant. What's that all about? So, the West needs to begin to understand that we're not dealing with an issue of religion. We're dealing with the promoters of Sharia. That's who the enemy is, in my opinion.
This is very interesting, because in the West there is a certain ignorance of Islam. They assume it's a different, more exotic form of Christianity. They've abandoned their Christianity. And Islam, because many of its leaders are anti-Western, they think it's on the left, it's fashionable, and if they don't embrace it, they embrace support of it. But as you say, it's not religion as we think it. It's an entire way of life and culture, a way of governing every action of every person.
Correct. My birth certificate, when I was born in Israel, it says father Muslim, mother Christian, child Muslim. My mother wasn't permitted to leave from the Middle East. She was an American. She was held against her will for almost 35 years. Why? Because there isn't a single Muslim society in the world that is signatory to the Hague Convention regarding the abduction of women and children. Who here in the West is asking the question about the Hague Convention? Who's asking questions even here during this election about Obama's Islamic connections? His uncle Saeed Obama visits the Muslim World League, which supports terrorism. His cousin Musa Ismail Obama appears on Al Jazeera television, and he raises funds for Grandma Sarah Obama that sends scholarships from Kenya to the most virulent Wahhabi schools in Saudi Arabia. Yet it's a taboo to discuss Obama's family and relatives who are not just Muslims, but Islamists of the most virulent sect of Wahhabism. You could watch it on Al Jazeera. In the Middle East, we can discuss Obama's Islamic connections, but in the West, especially here where I'm sitting in CNN, it is a taboo. We created taboos, and we talk about freedom of speech in the West.
Well, I think it's even extended to Fox now. There's a limit to what you can say. I've always said this. I don't believe that Obama's any more Muslim than he's a Christian.
Right.
But he has connections. His family connections are extremely worrying.
Yes. I mean, Saeed Obama is his favorite uncle. Sarah Obama is his grandmother. They came to the inauguration. He has a brother named George Obama. His mother, George's mother, is a Christian, comes from a Christian family. Yet Obama has more closer connections to the Muslim side of his family in Kenya, but not the Christian side of his family in Kenya. So there is, this, I lived in this kind of culture. My mother was a Christian American. My father was Palestinian Muslim. I was in the middle. And my loyalty when I was a Muslim was not towards my American family, my grandpa and my grandma, but it was towards my Muslim family. So there is allegiances. Islam is a total way of life. It's how you eat, how you drink, how you dress. And we don't want to discuss this total way of life. And Europe has a major problem with Islamic religion. It has a huge problem in Europe. The problem is coming this way, and no one wants to discuss it because in America we consider discussing Islam as an issue of racism. It behooves me that discussing a theology or even ideology is issues of racism. The West exercises the least amount of racism in the world. Yet we talk about racism and we apply it in the wrong way all the time in the media.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? We've made so many advances, such progress when it comes to race. Just very briefly, if Obama does win the election, it's looking more and more unlikely. I think Romney's doing very well at this point. But if Obama does win another 4 years in office, what will that do? What will it change, the relationship between the West and the Islamic world?
Well, I mean, look at the foreign policy. I could say emphatically, the Arab Spring turned to be an Islamic winter. In fact, I was on Fox News talking about that during the Egyptian crisis, and I said it's going to turn to be an Islamic winter. Right. I was attacked. The other fellow who was doing the interview says, oh, no, it's a secular revolution. But we lost the entire Middle East. Right. The West lost foreign policy in the Middle East. Forgive me stopping
you there. We're about to lose a satellite. It's not censorship, believe me. But we must have you back on the show. I really want to. Thank you so very much indeed.
You bet. Thank